Tigraine Mantear, the infamous lost LOTR of Andor. When you think of her, your mind's eye turns to the third succession wars, and the strain on you. You think of the great sorrow that fell upon your land when she disappeared, the queen's degeneration, and the uncertainty that followed. Were I to ask you, no doubt you would claim no such thing. Instead, you would speak of her in such glowing terms. Tigraine, light, bless her soul, but she was fine. Such a sorrow that she did not get to rule. Yes, Tigraine would have made for a great queen. You Andorans are odd. Wow. I do not think much of your adoration of queen and country, but I now return to you the tale of your lost daughter Heir. If you must think of her, it is best that you see her as she truly was. If you must mourn her loss, it is best that you know the manner by which it came about. There is perhaps no greater joy in all the world than the wonder of holding one's own newborn child. When Maudrelin, then merely daughter Heir, took her baby in hand, she was struck by the little bundle. Birth is a process oft approached with a hint of trepidation. Many wisdoms and wise women have dedicated their lives into honing this craft and using it as much as they are able. Still, it's never a sure thing. Sometimes the mother or child or even both are lost, unless one has an Aes Sedai at hand. The White Tower usually has vested interest in keeping the lines of succession stable, and their ties with Andor are such that this would have been kept in mind. The Aes Sedai advisor to Andor was in waiting, and so the process went smoothly. The birth had no complications, and both mother and child would soon present themselves before the Queen's court. Queen Dolera held the child to her aged and lined face and wept in joy. The line was secure. Andor would grow stronger yet, and its future will be in this girl child. What a blessing of the light that this meeting between crone, maiden, and babe could be made possible. In a few years' time, Maudrelin would give birth to another child, male this time. The omens, it seemed, were good. The nation would have a daughter Heir in Tigraine and a prince of the sword in Luke. The children were brought up in Caemlyn's royal castle, at the very heart of court. They saw its follies, its triumphs, the great toll of rule, and the weight that a decision made here could hold for all the land. They were tutored in history and the sciences, in etiquette and in posture, in the arts and in the sports that any lord or lady ought to know. Hawking, for example. In the evenings they would retire for some entertainment in the form of songs and stories from some of the best bards that the land could offer. Mara and the Foolish Kings, the tales of Anla the Wise Counselor, the giants Mask and Mosk and their war with lances of fire, tales of the sea folk and their stretching seas, tales of Aes Sedai and the deeds of their valorous warders. They listened, and their hearts were gladdened, their minds expanded. As they grew older, their paths diverged somewhat. Tigraine was taken in hand by her mother and trained in the minutiae of rule, the many dances that a queen has to make, the duty she owes her people, the mettle that one has to possess in order to meet the expectations of the throne. She was given tours of the city, shown its defenses, given access to the state of the realm. Not all of its secrets were handed to her, just enough that she could be aware of her duty and destiny. She was to be queen one day. Luke was given similar trips through Caemlyn, though they were the hands of soldiers. He was trained with a blade, learning its ways, The many mental exercises he had to master, the poses, the ancient practice called the flame and void that his teachers insisted was crucial to becoming a blade master. He was trained in the command of men, in battle strategies and the arts of war. His duty was impressed upon him. He was to be Tigraine's shield and sword, enforcer of her commands and her ultimate protector. Then the queen passed from this mortal coil and into the Creator's light. Andor mourned, the people donning bands as a commemoration of her long rule. Mordolen ascended the lion throne, donned the rose crown, and rose up as queen of all Andor. From the ramparts of castles, in the marketplaces, and in the inns of distant towns, criers and announcers heralded the dawn of a new age. Better times were coming, and the queen would be at the helm of it all. Tigraine was now confirmed as daughter Heir, and true responsibility was thrust upon her. She watched as her mother sat through meetings with the lords and ladies of the noble houses and saw firsthand the true ruthlessness that a ruler has to wield. The Andoran houses play at unity and stability, but they can be as rabid as any carrion. Every smile veiled a plot, every congratulation rendered seemed to hinge on some hidden condition. She saw it all and knew that this was, in many ways, childhood's end. There is a tradition dating back to Andor's very founding. Each daughter Heir must spend some time within the White Tower. There exist strong ties between Aes Sedai and Andor, and this practice has always strengthened and upheld these bonds. Even to this day, Andor is the only nation that openly acknowledges that it has an Aes Sedai advisor. So it was that Tigraine, now 16, made her way to Tavalon. She donned the white training garb and settled within the tower, cleaning and running errands for the sisters. Her testing had proved beyond the shadow of a doubt that she had no innate channeling ability. So the sisters, overseeing her, sought to impart knowledge that would aid her in rule. The cold command of an Aes Sedai, the sixth sense of dancing around political situations, the essential art of designing public perception. She might not become a sister, but she was taught as much about what went into crafting that facade as was plausible. Then her tenure ended. She went back to Andor, serpentine ring upon her finger to mark her as tower trained. For as long as anyone can remember, there has always been tension between Andor and Heir. Over the last few years, those tensions escalated until the two nations went to war. It was all over some dispute on trade along the river Erin. After some unknown engagement period, they sought peace, and the leaders of both countries gathered to form a treaty. Queen Mordolen Mantear of Andor and King Laman Damodred of Cairhien peered at each other over a table laden with papers and documents in a room full of soldiers and toadying lords, and they hammered out the details of this new would-be agreement. A key tenet of it was that a nephew of Laman's, Taringel Damodred, would wed Andor's daughter Heir, Tigraine Mantear. Thus, the treaty was signed, and Andor went to bed with Cairhien. Taringel was an ambitious man, not well liked in Andor. Like any Cairhien, he was proficient in the game of houses, Days Daima, and he was prepared to use every skill at his disposal to meet his goals. He hoped that a son of his would one day claim the sun throne of Cairhien as surely as a daughter of his would be queen of Andor. His plans seemed to be progressing quite nicely. Tigraine would soon give birth to a young boy whom they named Galadriel Damodred, such a beautiful baby. Tigraine loved him with all her heart, just as intensely as she despised his father. But what of it? Now, all that was left was for her to issue forth a daughter that would secure Andor's throne, and Taringail's plans would be on their way to success. But it was not to be. It began, I suppose, with the appointment of Gitara Moroso as Queen Modrelen's Aes Sedai advisor. She was a sister of the White Azure, calm as all Aes Sedai are wont to be, firm yet fair. She possessed the talent of foretelling, one of the last known sisters to possess it, certainly the strongest in attendance. In time, she bade Lord Luke Mantear, Tigraine's brother, leave Andor and seek some destiny within the Blight. None knew what words she spoke to him, only that the man left Caemlyn and was never seen or heard of again. Even as the family reeled in grief, Tigraine was summoned, and she too was given reason to depart Andor. "You must leave this land," the old woman said. "You will depart unseen and go to the Heir West. There, you must become a maiden of the spear. You cannot return until the Heir leave their waste. All of Andor depends upon this. All of the world depends upon this." What was Tigraine to do? She had been raised up knowing that she had a duty to Andor and its people. She had been trained in the tower and likely knew of Gitara's ability. One does not question a sister of the White Tower, but few can really appreciate their abilities as one who has trained within Tar Valon's confines. Tigraine knew a sister could not lie. Shackled as she was by the three odds, Gitara Sedai's words were true. So Tigraine stole away from Caemlyn, leaving behind the life she had been brought up to claim, abandoning the titles that were hers and the duties she had sworn to uphold. When this was discovered, Andor was shaken. Attempts to recover her proved unsuccessful, and the lords and ladies of the noble houses realized what a boon this was. Immediately, they brokered agreements with one another. Alliances and betrayals, kidnappings and assassinations, each house gearing up for the struggle of succession. In the span of a year, Queen Modrelen had lost both her children. It seemed the light had turned from her frail gaze. Grief-stricken, she was taken in, ill, and soon passed away. Andor bled as the wolves let loose, the noble houses each making a play to be the next in line for the Lion Throne. In the end, despite the sneers of her rivals, Morges of House Strakand would ascend the Lion Throne, donning the rose crown as Queen of all Andor, beloved of the light and protector of these people. To add legitimacy to her claim, she took Taringail as consort and took in his child Galadriel as her own. Taringail's dreams were once again restored, except that he had now gained an appreciation of how easily they could be quelled. Quietly he seethed at his consort, for she did not indulge his pride in any way. Fool man, Andor had a queen. It would never accept the meddling of some man, especially a foreigner. Morges would issue forth a girl child named Elaine, who was to take the throne in time, and another, a boy named Gawain, who would be Prince of the Sword. Andor settled in for new heights, a new family at the helm to steer it forward. But what of Tigraine? Making her way across the land to the Dragon Wall, Tigraine had descended to the other side of the west. Having been tutored both in Camelin and at Tav alone, she knew something of their ill. She knew of their reticence, their odd ways, the fact that they never left their wastes. Few people were allowed to come into the West. Most were turned away or slain. She knew this, but what choice did she have but to move forward? By degrees, she crossed the rocky shell, then into the desert proper. Her supplies dwindled, her horses stumbling until finally they died. Carrying as much of the supplies as she could bear, she moved on, her sight blearing, her senses vacillating as she saw mirages, illusions of her son, her husband. She saw her mother, wept for the grief this loss would surely cause her. Soon enough, her food and water ran out. Yet she did not stop walking. The sun stung her face, the winds chilling her in the night, even as the sun beat down on her in daytime. Was she to die here? Where were they ill? And best known to her, they had been following her all along. The ill hold a deeply ingrained contempt for all things wetlander. They had made an exception for Carrion because of their gift of water, allowing their merchants to cross the wastes and trade with Shara. But that was as much liberty as they were willing to extend. There is always a group of warriors patrolling the Dragonmount. Anyone who dares cross into their land is aptly punished. In this case, it was a contingent of Faderis Mai. These maidens had spotted Tigraine on her first day here. Some of them wanted to stop her then and there, strip her, beat her, and run her back to whence she came. What was the fool doing here with all that silk and fluff to hamper her progress? And on a horse too. Whitelanders. A few of the maidens, however, hesitated. They weren't doing anything particularly interesting, and there was something intriguing about this woman. The set look to her face, the determination. It's something most Aiel possess intuitively, but it's a very rare thing to see west of the Dragon Wall. That implacable sense of braving the elements, of standing tall, unbowed, unbroken, even when failure is certain. So the maidens stalked her. A few even made a game of it. How close could they get before she noticed them? Tigraine, of course, never even sensed them. In their Cadinsaw, Aiel are notoriously well camouflaged against the desert backdrop. As Tigraine stumbled, the maidens watched as she walked on and on and on, despite the overwhelming fact that she would soon die. The warriors gained a grudging respect for her. It's an intriguing aspect of their Aiel culture. They hold a lot of contempt for us, wetlanders they term us. Yet, if they recognize an aspect of themselves in you, they tend to bring you into the fold. They still do it to this day. When Tigraine fell for the last time, her consciousness tumbling into the heat haze that would soon kill her, the maidens finally approached. Setting up a tent, they tended to this strange woman. They were curious about her. In their eyes, she was now worth something. Tigraine awoke to find herself in this company. A dozen or so hardy women, all wielding spears and bucklers, eager to question her. She recognized them for a year, of course. How could she not? She was scared, yes, but she had a duty, and it seemed she had succeeded in the first part of that plan. So when they questioned her, Tigraine told it all plainly. She was a daughter Heir of Andor. They weren't impressed by this. Who had received a foretelling from an Aes Sedai? This definitely impressed them. And dare she say, were those furtive looks of fear? No, probably not. She had been compelled to leave everything behind and seek out their Heir. She must join their maidens of the spear, or else all would be lost. On the surface, the story was utterly ridiculous. Many would have dismissed it. Certainly it would not have been enough to earn admittance into the Heir society. The idea of a wetlander joining was just ridiculous. But these people have a certain respect for the sisters of the White Tower. When she spoke of a foretelling from an Aes Sedai, her words suddenly seemed 10 times worth their weight. She was brought along with them, taken to their wise ones, who, after deliberations, agreed to let her try. The women, ageless in a manner reminiscent of the sisters themselves, knew even better than the maidens the abilities an Aes Sedai could possess. No person of even passing intelligence should disregard their words. Looking back at her past, at the son she had lost, and the nation she would likely never rule, at the extended connections to the future she had thought would be hers, Tigraine felt grief. She had to cut ties to everything that had ever defined her. The wheel of time had deemed it so. How was it that her life thread had fallen so far from the original design? Realizing that she had to adapt to this new path, Tigraine Mantear, daughter rare of one of the most powerful nations in the world, took up a new name, Heir, she who is dedicated to this cause for which she had had no explanation, for which she had had no expectations, save that it would steer the future from disaster. Most people agree that life is hard, but the sentiment is very, very relative. To a beggar in the underbelly of Maying, this difficulty presents itself in a very distinct manner. The same applies to the soldiers of Shiena, to the fishermen who ply the waters of the fingers, to the miners who toil in Heir. But this pales to the hardness of the Aiel West and the people who live here. Simply put, the Whale is a broken, sun-blasted land. It defies belief that any life could exist here. Here the Aiel not only survive, but they have thrived here. The land is a crucible, and they have been forged into something sturdier than most people. Tigraine, as a hopeful acolyte, had to learn how to survive this place. Not only that, but she had to try for a place amongst one of the warrior societies, the Fadaris, my maidens of the spear. Her task was daunting, but she tackled it admirably, with patience, with persistence and deliberation. She learned bushcraft, lessons that were essential for any Aiel. She learned the subtleties of Aiel culture, the nuances of the Gieto system. From daybreak to night down, she trained with the spears, honing whatever agility she had previously possessed. At the end of these trials, she knelt before the wise ones, swore her oaths to the spear, and was welcomed into their society. To seal her to the Aiel, she was summarily adapted into the Tadad. The terms of Gitara Sedai's prophecy had been met, and she would never be the same again. But I see you're exhausted. There is yet more story to tell, but that can wait. We'll take a keep and continue tomorrow. Donations for the Gleeman, much appreciated. Inkeep, can you have some more ale, please?